Before we jump in today, we want to congratulate our guest, Jonathan Kvarfordt. His podcast, the Go to Market AI podcast, hit the top 30 spot on Spotify's top business podcast lists. Congratulations. Hi, I'm Kelly Lewis.
And I'm Tiffany Jones.
And we're your revenue insiders.
We know life gets busy. If you need to step away from this episode, make sure you are following our podcast wherever you're tuning in from. That'll make it easy to find us again.
Hello, hello, hello. We are here today with the wonderful Jonathan Kvarfordt, also known as Coach K. So, Coach K, thank you for being here today. We're thrilled to have you. I've spent some time with Coach K multiple times, actually, I think, doing different recordings, webinars in the past. He is now an expert on all things go-to-market AI. And so that's why we have him here today, because we are going to be talking AI.
Well, it's my pleasure. Kelly, I'm a big fan of you over the years of just watching you and your career. And then Tiffany, I told this before the recording, I'm a fan from afar. But the first time we get to talk to you in person, I feel honored and humbled. So I appreciate the time and the request.
We're super excited to have you on. AI is a fun topic. I enjoy talking about it too. So I'm really excited to get into it today. But
cool.
We'd love to hear a little bit about your background first.
I'll do a really quick, hopefully less than 2-minute version. I grew up doing sales. So my dad owned a tire mechanic shop. I sold tires and wheels, and I should say I busted farm tires and wheels when I was a kid, long time ago. And then eventually went to selling and then ran the business myself for a while. Then I went to sales of all kinds. From my first actual sales job outside of my dad was Yellow Pages back before internet days. That tells you how old I am. To insurance, to sponsorships for events, to cars, to financial service products, to coaching products, to SaaS. And I've sold anything from SaaS to small business to enterprise level. So I've kind of run the gamut as far as sales. And then one of the last places I was at was Franklin Covey, and that's where I shifted from. My role there was both selling and then training, and so I shifted kind of enablement before enablement was called enablement. And then I was asked to kind of roll out a Franklin Covey rollout for a company, this multi-billion-dollar company, and so I had my first feet wet with enablement, doing a Franklin Covey playbook of their sales methodology, and I kind of just stayed in enablement since then for the last 12 years. With AI, I was introduced to an AI product 5 years ago. And the company at the time had bought this technology that was unique to them. Like the guy built his own model from scratch. The technology is called Mars View. And what it did was, on a video like this, it would read someone's emotional status, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, and then give a readout on how they're performing or doing or whatever to give engagement on how they're operating. So the company I was with bought the technology, and I was in charge of making sure that both the internal team and external customers had some clue of what in the world we were talking about when we said AI. So that's why I got my first. I knew about AI before, but I really got my deep education in that with the founder who actually built AI. He's actually an expert. I'm a nerd. I'm not. I don't call myself an expert. I'm a nerd. And then ever since, I've been deep diving. And obviously, ChatGPT came out, and I launched the academy. I've been really deep in it, doing a lot of different things and go to market with AI the last 2 years. So it's been a crazy, wild ride for a couple of years now. So there's a hopefully less than 2 minutes.
I love that background. First, the second you talked about that AI company, I immediately was like, how do I look on this camera right now? Now I'm really sensitive because AI can handle it in my facial expressions. My second question for you, though, or I want you to share the fun fact. So you told me last time we talked that you have seen a crazy number of AI demos over the last couple of years. What was that number again?
Last year, I just did my count because I always do a review of my meetings for the year. I've seen 314 AI demos in 2024 of different tech. They're all different tech. And that's either been through a Loom or Live Thing or something. Well, I don't know if here's the thing, is that there's literally hundreds of tools being released monthly. So I've probably seen 1% of all the technology out there, but I've got a good feel of what's out there from a go-to-market perspective. So
it's so interesting to see the explosion of AI. Like you say 5 years ago, and for some people that sounds like really recent, but in like the span of AI, that's like a lifetime ago of AI evolution. Like a lot of people think AI and they think the last 2, maybe 3 years as their frame of reference of like really understanding the presence of AI. I'm curious, like when you think about maybe let's call it before ChatGPT, before OpenAI and after OpenAI, have you heard people think or respond to the concept of AI? Is it different before it became so widely democratized?
Yeah, I mean, it had this kind of Terminator feel before because that was the only really reference that most people had with it. With it was that or Matrix or some sort of end of the world scenario of AI. I mean, the only positive notion of it would be Jarvis on Iron Man. It's like the only positive thing we've ever seen from an AI perspective. But for the most part, when it came to actual technology, someone saying we have AI, most people referred to it as machine learning or natural language processing or some other term that is now bucketed under AI, but they used another thing that just sounded like some tech speak and then no one had any clue what they actually meant. So it's definitely a different world now. It's kind of like agents now. We're going through the same thing with agents that we did AI 2 years ago, where everyone's saying agent this and agent that, but there's a spectrum. And so everyone's confused of what in the world is actually an agent. And no one really knows because there's no god of AI that says this is now an agent. Like everyone's just saying whatever they want. And so no one has a clue of what it actually is, but it's coming more clear as we go. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so you just said it. You said the magic word, agents, AI agent. How would you explain an AI agent?
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully I'll give okay answer. I'm going to give two different answers, actually. There's the marketing version, and then there's the actual version. The marketing version, I just attended a Grammarly AI Trends thing, and they presented the same way of how I think about it, is that there's a spectrum. Some people call it a regular chat interface, like with ChatGPT, an agent. However, I would argue that's not quite an agent. It's just a chatbot going back and forth doing some polls on prompts. Actual agent means agency, which means it has some ability to do something that I'm not necessarily directing you with. Now, they just operate and function a little bit differently. Now, again, from the marketing perspective, for those listening out there, when you hear agents, you'll know it's going to come anywhere from a chatbot type of interaction all the way to an autonomous executing on action type of agents. Like it's all across the board. So it's going to be up to you to kind of do the questions you need to do with whatever team you're interacting with to understand if it is actually an agent or just a chatbot.
That's a great explanation.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
makes it really interesting to frame it. I've spent a good amount of time talking with Salesforce about their agent, an agent force, as they've coined it, and what that means. And I think the agency part of that resonates because what I like about what they offer, we're not users of it at this point in time, but the ability for me as a RevOps individual to train it on what I want it to do. Like I want to, and at the end of the day, what I want to do is give my sales team agency to do things they otherwise have to go to another human internally to get done. But I'm just following a very specific rule book, or my team is directly. And that's how we've been thinking about this whole like concept of agents. I'm curious, one, I'm going to steal some opinions from you on this so I can keep forming my strategy for next year. But I'm curious, like how you've, in all of the demos you've done and the work you've been doing this year, what are the ways that people are thinking about this incorrectly that you would specifically caution against and how they're approaching it?
Of agents or AI in general?
We can go AI in general. I mean, I feel like
Either
agents
way.
is all I hear right now and what I'm doing,
Yeah.
but yeah, make it general.
When I have people come to me, and this happened last week 3 different times with 3 different people at 3 different stages of companies, 3 different sizes. Like same question. Was the first thing he said was, "What AI tool should I get?" And that's usually the mistake, is starting with technology. And I don't think that's where you should start. I think it's starting with what's the outcomes or end result you're going for. And then figuring out, okay, based on where we're at as a business, like what are the cost reductions and the revenue drivers and what's the goal for next year and blah, blah, all that other stuff, and understanding where you are. Then you can look at AI tech because you can narrow it down to what is the most important for the business. Now, to add on to that, though, AI is getting to the point to where it can do things that was not possible before. And so you have to think about not just automating and speeding up the past versions of process or how we did things before, but it's literally recreating it. Like we're building airplanes with technology and we've never flown before. So like when we say, hey, we can get you from LA to New York in 2 hours, back in 1890, that was impossible. But it is now because we thought of a new way to transport ourselves in an airplane. And that's what we're going through literally with agents, is that we're going to be experiencing. We're now used to driving horses and now going to cars. We're going into flight mode with agents. So like it makes you have to rethink about what's possible, the time frames, what the process is like, all the protocols around having to travel in air versus on the road, like all these different things. Even though the starting point and destination is the same, how you get there is way different. So I don't know if that's a good comparison. That's how I've been thinking about it, is like, it's just we're building airplanes and figuring out how the heck to fly them. So, yeah.
No,
I like, though, the starting with the problem first, because I
yeah,
think that is oftentimes the challenge is you've got all these vendors calling you and you don't even know what problems you're trying to solve. So
Right.
on that note, I'm just curious, you've talked to also probably some really smart VPs of RevOps, heads of RevOps, as well as some really smart CROs. What are those smart individuals that are thinking about this correctly? What are they doing?
Of how to apply AI?
Yeah, and with their AI strategy.
There's some of it is being willing to do the boring stuff. I'll give you an example. I've gone into, I know you probably have both seen this too, because you're in this world, but like I've gone into a lot of teams where they want to automate something, but they've never written down their actual sales process, exit criteria, or whatever else. Like, so I'm like, okay, you want me to automate something that's unknown? Like, you can't do that. You know, it's boring. It's not sexy. It's not fun. You have to sit down and actually map out what in the world's going on. But when you can do that, that's when the magic happens, because then you can speed up actual current processes. The other side of it is, though, it's not just about speeding up what was there before, like all the sales process as it was before. It's also about thinking, is there another way to do this? They're open-minded to new possibilities with the job at hand to make sure they can actually execute on something faster, better than they were before. And I'll give you a real-time example using some technology that exists now. So there's a tech called onemind.com. It's basically what they're calling superhumans, but it's an AI avatar that's been trained on 3 or 4 different models of AI. One's generative AI, one's called prescriptive AI, one's called, I think they use RAG of some kind. And behind the scenes, they have this mountain of data of information, of all the sales information and product information, technical information, all this other stuff. So that when a customer comes onto a website, it has this option of popping open the screen, and then all of a sudden live has this live avatar like on a Zoom meeting like this. And then they can go in there and ask any question they want to, from pricing to technical information, for a demo, for all of this stuff. So you can pretty much take the standard first 3 steps of a sales process as being automated with an AI, like an AI that's sales engineer level good at presenting stuff. So when you have that, that means that, and this is like so in a world of like, I don't know if customers are going to like this experience. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. Like, we're in this place of like, let's try it and see. But in that world, being able to be willing to try something like that would dictate then your sales team, because they're not doing that anymore, would have to be narrow in their scope of skills and way better at whatever those scope of skills is, from negotiation, relationship building, and trust, all that other shenanigans they have to do when they're not demoing and building pipeline and everything else, right? So like, that's an example of rethinking, like, is there something else we could or should be doing with technology we have never been able to do before? And then being willing to look at it, but always comes back down to, what am I trying to accomplish? Like, the one mind concept is about driving more pipeline, getting things more efficient. It's like the end goal is the same. It's just doing it differently. Does that make sense? So being open-minded to possibility and being willing to experiment and iterate, but also having the end goal of the same thing, like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Which to me, it's like, if I can find the perfect world of obviously reducing costs, improving revenue, and making an amazing customer experience, it's a win.
Yeah. I mean, everything you're saying is fundamental to how we operate in RevOps from the beginning, right? Like, forget AI, like anything you're doing. Like, I don't know how many times I've had the drumbeat of asking, like, what problem are you at? Like, don't tell me what tool you want. Like, what problem are you
No problem.
genuinely trying to solve? And who knows what, I mean, the question have always gone down, like, do we have that tool already? Is it actually a process problem? Is it an enablement problem? Like, before you get there. But I think, to your point on needing to have your imagination open to figure out even how to get there, because you can't even imagine it today. You can't fathom how AI could even start to solve these problems. Like, you have to anchor on that ultimate solution. We used to do this peanut butter and jelly exercise that's made for like elementary school kids, but I would run it every year with my business analyst team to be like, write down how I should make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because it's just so critical to get all of those, the boring
Right.
stuff.
Right. Totally agree.
Okay, one question I've been dying to ask you. So this was, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, there was a lot of conversation around systems of record. And there were a lot of individuals out there saying, end of the era. There is no longer a need for a system of record. And then you have people like Benioff, CEO of Salesforce, saying, no, absolutely you do. And there's good reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your prediction here?
I don't know if I'm going to call it a system of record, but there will have to be some sort of data holding mechanism, because data needs to go somewhere. So whether it becomes the CRM and then they morph into something more than just CRM data entry, because to me, it goes back down to the basics. Why did we have a CRM in the first place? What was it built for? It was to capture the data from sales or CS people so that other people could have access to that same information that lived in their brains. That was essentially the original version of it. Have a centralized customer relationship management tool. That was the purpose. And now that you have AI that can automate, so number one, it can extract any information that happens in emails, text, calls, whatever the case is, and you can port that or transport it or automate it into any other source you want to. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities that then means that if you have more of a broader database like a Snowflake, it opens up to a place where instead of porting everything into a CRM, you could, in theory, port everything into a Snowflake type of environment and then use different type of AI tech from RAG to other things to be able to access, generate, and understand what's going on in various tools. Now, this requires a lot of technology, internal resources, talent, know-how, that kind of stuff. But the ability to do that now, building things internally, is more accessible than it ever has been before, which I think is going to be interesting. So it'll be cool to see what people actually do with it.
I mean, I keep going back to your last point because even when you're talking about that point, you still have to know your data so well to tell the system where to put that information it's capturing, or it can capture all the information in the world, but if you don't know how you want to then receive it, let alone train it, like you're not going to end up Salesforce or any CRM or even just Snowflake. It won't end up in a place that's usable for you if you haven't done that really boring groundwork to kind of lay out what all of those pieces look and sound like.
Totally. I like to compare it to, and Kelly, obviously you enable, and I'm sure you know this too, Tiffany, that like, it's kind of like the competency model. And I know this is a very random thing, but I just literally thought about it right now. It's just like this exact same thing. So a lot of people like look at current top sales reps and they create their competency model based on the current top sales reps. The problem is two things. One, those top sales reps are unconsciously competent. It means they can't describe what the heck they're doing right. And two is their outward behaviors doesn't necessarily mean what they're doing is actually something that can be duplicated in the first place. So what you first need to do is start with the gap, the goal, and what behaviors, outcomes, skills, processes will drive towards that thing. And then you create your competency model based on the outcomes. To me, it's the same thing based on a CRM. Like if you use just the current data your team's using, you're leaving out this whole chunk of possible data that you could be accessing that you're not. And so whatever data bank you do decide on, it has to be at a point to where you're using some sort of framework or model or something to where you can have the ability to capture or access information as you need to, and then categorize in a way so that if you decide to get new information on whatever thing you're wanting to prompt for, like for example, a new competitor comes on the market, but you didn't know it until 3 months in, you can go back and query and saying, hey, tell me more about this competitor that may have come up that I didn't know about. And then it pops back open to information. But before AI stuff, you couldn't do that because it required a human. The human was a bottleneck to input manually into a CRM, and then it's just lost after the call because it doesn't get access, So it's kind of a fascinating thing to where more and more, and I'm saying this because we were talking about this before on our prep call, the Klarna case. Klarna back in August, September, or somewhere around there somewhere, got rid of Salesforce on Monday. Now they didn't necessarily replace everything with AI, but they did a lot with AI. And when you look at their profitability from Q3, their profitability skyrocketed by 57% from not just the technology reduction, but also the people reduction and adding in AI technology. Like the writing on the wall is just that use case is crazy to think about some of the things. And we're not even tapping into the possibilities of what's going to happen when the agents really get on the scene and start to do some things. So it's the impact of where we're going through is crazy. And to say to someone 5 years ago, there's a world where you're not going to use Salesforce, you're like, no way. There's no way that would ever happen. Right. But now it's like there's a possibility where that could happen. Essentially.
I mean, I think that's most people today are probably going to listen and say like, absolutely not. Like that future doesn't.
It doesn't happen, right? Like it's closer than you think. It takes some work to get it done, but it's possible. So
yeah.
So let's play into that. So say we're in this future world and you're not entering data. So as a sales rep, you think about the different skills and behaviors you need to have to be a really successful rep. And I typically think there's the EQ, your ability to connect with people and do those standard selling skills. And then there's the project management piece. You're managing a deal from top to bottom. You're entering the data where it needs to be. You're forecasting correctly and you're working well with your manager on those pieces. And they're kind of two separate things. If you're a seller right now and you're trying to future proof yourself, what skills are you focused on right now? Or if you're an enablement team and you're thinking about how you continue to up level your team, where are you focused?
Okay, I'll take the sales rep first. We'll get to enablement because enablement I have a lot of opinions on.
Okay.
Great.
But let's go to Salesforce. So there's a quote by Jeff Bezos when someone asked him, like, what's gonna be the biggest thing that will change in 5 years? And he said, that's the wrong question. The right question is what's not going to change. So I think part of it's going to be understanding what, even with all the acceleration of AI, what won't change, and that's the human-human relationship. Now, there's something to be said of, like, in a world where an AI could literally do the entire sales process, would you need a human? Like, I keep asking this question of, like, would I buy $1 million house completely from an AI avatar? Maybe. I don't know. Like, if I had a hologram of a house and it walked me through everything and all this stuff, like, would maybe I buy a house?
I don't know that I'd buy $1 million ARR software product, though.
Right. Would you put your reputation on the line? Like, that's the question. Like, would I do that? I'm like, no. Different. Yeah. So like, I put products in that different place, saying, would I buy this massive, humongous thing from an AI? Maybe. Would I do this with an AI and trust it with my CFO's data and to do annual 10Ks? No. So there's this level of what am I okay with? And I think it's the same thing with sales. So it kind of depends on what you're selling. And then in the world where you can think about, like the example I just gave, when right now today, you have a technology that can replace the first half of the sales process. That means that the half that's not being taken care of is the EQ, emotional intelligence, reading the room, strategizing. Like AI can suggest all sorts of things, but it's not going to have that human element. And as long as, I think trust is the biggest factor, because I think there will be a world where people will come to trust AI a little bit more in certain areas, but in other ways, it's not going to. And if you're going to be buying $1 million or whatever technology, you want to know who the heck is behind it besides just the AI, so you can understand if you can trust the team, So that's one thing to think about. It's just like, what is the relationship-based stuff, the human-to-human interactions, negotiation, conflict management, governing your own emotions, all this stuff, because if you take out all the other crap and all you're doing is relationship, that means you've got to be really freaking good at building relationships and understanding people, which takes a lot of inner work, because you have to understand yourself and be able to communicate that better, which we haven't had in the past, because we'd be able to shield it with automations and tools and all the other stuff. Last thing is, though, I do think that also means there is some AI skills you have to be able to adopt, because when you're working with, I tell people, even with AI as it is now, that you have to be creative, you have to be super critical, like an editor, and you have to be like this, I call it the VP of everything. So if I could have, as a salesperson, I have a prospecting agent, and I have a research agent, and I have a CRM data agent, and I have agent. So 9 of the 10 things that I do every day, except for the human-human interaction, is all agentized. I have to have the ability to know what good output is and understand how systems work basically, so I know if it's working or not correctly. So that's on me. I can't, obviously enablement should be helping with this, but in the ideal world, the sales rep needs to own it. It's their book of business as to what they're responsible for. Now with enablement, this kind of goes back to the, if I'm talking, should I shut up for a second? Let you ask, because I can go for a while. Okay.
I'm really interested to hear where you're going to
go. Okay. So if I go back to the purpose of enablement for a second, I'm going to compare the CRO to the Emperor of Hunger Games. And to me, enablement ideally should be the game maker, meaning that instead of trying to kill people, they're creating the environment that people can succeed. So whether there's a lot of different enablers, from incentives to training, coaching, feedback, all that kind of stuff. We're getting in a world, and one of my themes for the year is reducing friction. And I think that's what enablement should be doing in general anyways, is either improving performance somehow or reducing friction. Because so many times I see so many enablement teams who put crap in the way that doesn't help anybody. But they do it because that's the playbook of how enablement does things, and it drives me nuts. So going back to the game maker world, because we now have this environment to where, instead of thinking like I'm going to be an enablement leader that's governing this technology, it's more of like I'm an AI agent creator, that my entire job is to figure out how I can use AI to reduce friction and to improve performance. That's it. That's my entire job. So then they become the game maker, understanding the environment that both the buyers and the sellers and the customer success people, whoever they're enabling, are, and then inputting things in there. So instead of having a wolf that's going to kill you, it's going to be an agent that helps you succeed in whatever the case is. Does that make sense? But that requires a different skill set, different mindset, different understanding, different expectations of what enablement is in the first place, and what CROs are expecting from them. Like, there's all these layers of change that's required of. And I've been tooting on this horn for 2 years now, and I still see people who are still focused on, let's make an LMS course and see how many people actually go through it. I'm like, that is the wrong definition. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm just like, that's not what enablement is. And it drives me crazy.
It's a piece of enablement. It should not be the main focus. Yeah.
That's right. It's a piece, but it's not, it's a branch. It's not the tree. So anyways, yeah.
as you walked through all of that, the thing that jumped out to me, and it's not the exact question you asked, Kelly, but I'd love to know your thoughts on this, is jump from early in your career in sales to an exceptional relationship enterprise seller feels like it's going to be so much harder because the job that you used to grow through to develop those skills will become agentized. And I think enablement plays a huge role in figuring out how you develop that skill gap. I mean, I think we'll still have segments across the markets, but it seems like the growth is going to be bigger jumps than it's been. I'm curious, if you have any thoughts on that trajectory for individuals.
Yeah, it's actually a conversation happening not only in sales, but outside of sales, outside of go to market in a lot of different roles. Because if you think about a lot of the training that people get is being a lower level, whatever position. I shouldn't say low level because I know a lot of really good SDRs who are professional SDRs and they're good. They choose to be
Totally.
SDRs,
Yeah.
But point is though, is that they could grow in today if they wanted to. And that's the place with a lot of different technology or a lot of different roles. But in general though, I don't know if this is a good comparison, but it's kind of like in the olden days, when I say olden, 150 years ago before tractors, you had a field of 150 different hands. And now you have one tractor doing the same work or twice as much as 150 hands in a cornfield. So in the old world, someone would be going out in the cornfield knowing how to pick corn, and now it's not even a thing anymore, So the question really is that what we should be mentoring them in? Is that really the best thing? Are we teaching them to pick corn, or is there a different place for us to put them in to be a better use of their time, talent, and other abilities? Now, I don't know if there's a world where if all the salesperson does was build relationships, I could see a world where someone's a junior AE, SDR, whatever, and the only thing they do is just co-pilot on different deals and do the same thing they're doing now, just very narrow set of things until they get the wheels off and start to run their own deals and crash and burn and learn and move it forward,
That's one thing I've been thinking about this question actually a little bit, Tiffany, and I agree with you. I think that actually role play AI is going to be huge here because when you think about how you learn and how sellers actually say they learn is being in the room, hearing here's your standard conversation that you have with a client. But the way you learn is you hear the different questions and the different ways that conversation could go and how you fit in those conversations. And so I think you'll actually see a lot more time spent in a role play setting and using role play to just give you mock experiences that happen outside of the norm. I also just think colleges are going to have to, and universities are going to have to rethink their approaches. We have go to market programs now. We have sales programs, but to your point, I think a little bit, a lot of what they're training them on right now is SDR skills because that's the initial job. Yeah. But if that stuff goes and moves to AI, what is that initial job then?
Yeah.
Is that just using agents or Copilot? What does that look like?
I mean, I think that's
it's a good question.
Cutting edge thing. Who's going to be the first? Talk about the first company to ditch Salesforce and Monday. Who's the first company to fully ditch their SDR motion and not just ditch it, but have a path of their absorbing new talent and pushing them through an actual career growth. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of directions to take that down from an AI perspective, but it's I'm looking forward to it. Because in my personal opinion, I think that AI frees us up to do less of the things that aren't really human anyways and gives us more space and time to do what's more human, and we're just not used to it yet. It's uncomfortable to be more human, which is what I'm deciding. Kind of funny, but yeah, very true.
Okay. I have we have two last questions, but one question before we get to the point of view question. You talked to 314 different vendors. I don't want you to give us their names, but I do want you to say the two that you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh gosh, that was cool. What are two new technologies that are AI driven that are coming our way? What are they? What were your favorite that you saw?
Oh gosh! So without naming names, you want me to say categories?
You can definitely name them. It's totally up to you. But if you don't want to, you don't have to.
No, that's fine. The problem is I know so many good technologies. So I might have to be broader because I don't want to be offensive to anybody because there's so much good tech out there. There's also a lot of crap, but there's a lot of good tech.
You can bucket it.
Yeah, you can bucket it in groupings too, like a segment of the market.
I'll tell more of a concept than a specific tech because it's changing. How about that? So I'll do my best to describe this. All right. So general concept, again, going into the agent world, but it's like this. I'm I'm gonna use SEO as an example of what I'm talking about because it's the best way I can describe it. Before, let's just say you had a human as a part of every step of this. So you have this team. Like if I hire an agency, you have to have someone who is usually an SEO agency or somebody doing backlinks and keyword research and understanding the marketplace and all this competitive research and then writing it, and then editing it and all this kind of stuff. The concept of replacing that entire agency with AI, everything. So the technology before was so siloed and piecemeal. So you have like ChatGPT chats, you have like this list of chats, like one's SEO and one's this and that. And even then it didn't have access to different things. They didn't cross talk to each other and all these different things. But now we're in a place where like there's platforms that you can do that in, so we can create agent teams. Like you have like just like in a regular organizational structure, you have a manager, you have an editor, you have a writer, you have a backlink person, you have an SEO writer or a researcher, you have a competitive research, you have market trends, all this stuff, right? So imagine like ChatGPT just came out with tasks. And so like it's thing you can put in saying, send me the news every day of whatever topic and it'll do it. So think about that times 100 with these agents being smart enough to actually execute. And not only can they do these things, but then they can post it on your Webflow website, and then they can have another analytical agent that analyzes results and see if it does well, give that back to the team, reiterate, do it again so that they can make sure the stuff's out. Like that's all automated to where now me as a human, I just pop in and go, oh, cool, looks good, pop out and I'm done. Does that make sense? That concept is mind blowing.
That is literally Coach
crazy.
Jay on our prep call had to help me with my SEO for my website. So
yeah,
he knows a little bit about this.
Yeah. So like I gave you the stuff, but like what I just described is something you could automate, just saying, make me a good SEO key term thing on this thing and help me conquer and drive this much pipeline, bam, and it's done. Like it's just, that's the world we're going to. It's not quite there yet. You have to do some manual back-end work between some automation plays and agent platforms, but very soon technology is going to have this weird melding place to where it's going to have access to a lot of different things that, I mean, imagine a world where, I'll give you an example. I wear this Aura ring that grades my health and all that kind of stuff. In a world where I could integrate that with all things that I have to my computer, it's all this other stuff, to an AI that understands things, to my heart AI, to my brain AI, to my weight AI, to my work AI, and all this other stuff, and all communicating together all this different stuff, and then giving the best outputs. So you can say, you perform your best at 1:45 p.m. and should make sure this particular activity is there. And so we scheduled for you the most impactful activity you could do during the day at this time. Cool. Does that make sense? I don't know any of that stuff. So it's like, that's the world we're going to, where it's like optimized like crazy. My fear is that there's two sides it could go. Either to where it's so optimized to where it's kind of like the Wall-E video where humans are on chairs and they're fat and running around. Like that's one version. And the other thing's just so optimized they don't have to do anything. But and this is my eternal optimist side, I feel like it's the point of place where I'll give an example of like when I create thought leadership, AI can't do that for me. I have to mind create it in my brain. And when it comes out, then I can get it amplified because of AI. So I see a world where, again, this is my hope, that our creativity and what we are as humans, which is that creative connecting animals that we are, or humans, becomes amplified because all the other fluff's out of the way. Like that's where I think we're going. And I don't think we have a concept of what that would mean. Like I'll give you another example of like, if I could have an AI, I have a brand new salesperson come in, and instead of me saying, hey, AI, give me an outline for an onboarding path, I say, AI, I need you to make sure you have an onboarding plan, execute it, and make sure that they're ramping within 3 months, or seeing what you can do to optimize that ramp time. And then they create whatever human learning models based on the technology and product and blah, blah. They execute it all. And all I do is just check in every week. It's like, great, they're onboarding great. You don't need anything from me. I just am there to connect with humans as they need to, that world is what I'm really excited about. And there's more and more technology coming out in that category. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that help? Hopefully.
No, that was great.
Yeah.
Okay.
A long-winded thing, but it's the thing I'm like geeking out on right now. I'm like, oh, yeah.
So now I'm just buzzing thinking about that whole world, but we love to leave the end of our episodes with a thought-provoking question, something to help everyone form their own point of view. And so we'd love for you to leave us and whoever's listening with a question for us to go think about as it relates to the world of AI.
How willing are you to think and do things differently that you've done before? You have to be open. If you're not willing to do that, so that's one question. I guess the second part to that would be, how willing are you to fail and to iterate and try again and to figure out how to do it right? Because when you're building airplanes via tech, you have to be willing to fall. or else you're not going to get there. And I think so many times we're so afraid of being perfectionistic in what we do. We don't give ourselves the chance to experiment and to play and to see what's going on. Like, it's kind of like being a kid again. For me, when I work with AI all day, I'm playing. I'm in a world where I mess up all the time and it's a blast. And you have to be willing to have that, because the people who say literally the epitome of this is how we've always done it, from process to tools to whatever, will not do very well. And so the more willing you are to be open to both new ways of being, doing, and thinking, the more successful you'll be.
I love that. And I think it's not just like knowing you're open and willing to do it, but stopping yourself and asking that question. Should I be thinking differently? Should I be doing this differently?
Yeah. Am I being like, call yourself out, challenge your team around you to call you out if you're taking too hard of a stance. I think that's a great takeaway.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Well, Coach K, thank you for joining us on the Revenue Insiders. This was a fun discussion. I learned a lot. I'm very jealous of your 314 demos. That was a lot of time, but I'm sure you saw some very amazing things that I would also love to see.
Yeah. Well, if you could have AI summarize that for us, that'd be great.
I actually, technically, I have, not to spoil the fun, but I'm going to be releasing an AI tool directory, which will literally have an AI on top of it to tell you about different technologies. And there's more than 314 in there. So I'm releasing a tool that will help with that. I just want to tell you ladies both, like, thank you so much. Thanks for letting me ramble and pontificate a little bit. You both do amazing work, and I'm just honored and pleased to hang out for a little bit.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
We appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
If you're enjoying the Revenue Insiders, we'd love your support. Follow us, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners like you.